As a platform, we will for the most part stand on various remarks that were made at the luncheon of the Africa Plan for Human Capital Development during a recent seminar at the World Bank in Washington, D.C. First, let us listen to Hafez Ghanem, the World Bank's Vice President for Africa. He states the importance of the value of the African child, where he believes every child must count, especially as Africa is at only about 40% of its economic potential. He also stresses the importance of education and access to reproductive health services in promoting economic development. Let us listen to Dr. Hafez Ghanem.
Africa is actually rich with its youth. 43% of Africans are younger than 15 years old. This is the continent's future. The continent relies on those girls and boys. Their brain power, their creativity, their energy, their hard work will make Africa prosper and compete in the global economy. I too am very, very confident and very optimistic about the future of Africa. The World Bank's Human Capital Index shows that Africa's children are still a distance away from enjoying full health and complete education. The index reveals that Africa is only at 40% of its economic potential. The disadvantages that many in Africa face are fundamentally unjust. But what is just as important is that economies whose future workers are held back will end up shortchanged. What would you like the future of Africa to look like? Let us imagine an Africa where all girls and boys arrive at school well-nourished and ready to learn, where all girls and boys acquire real learning in the classroom. All girls and boys enter the job market as healthy, skilled, and productive adults. Let us imagine a continent where every child counts, not just by being able to read and master basic math, but by contributing fully towards her family's well-being and her country's economy and GDP. I am honored and pleased to be launching the World Bank's Africa Human Capital Plan. This will help make the future of every child, that every child counts, a reality.
We now turn to Letsia III, King of Lesotho. As you will see, he eloquently describes the importance of investments in human capital for economic growth and development. He has been described as the champion of nutrition and human capital in Africa. Here is King Letsia III of Lesotho.
That, like many other challenges of development, the human capital challenge cannot be solved through a single one-shot intervention. It requires sustained, large-scale interventions across many areas: nutrition, water and sanitation, health, education, and also family planning. I therefore wish to take this opportunity to urge all stakeholders to join hands in order to tackle the daunting challenges that may lay ahead. Improving and building our human capital will require that we adopt collaborative and coordinated approaches that encompass governments, civil society, development partners, and the private sector, so that we can all together construct strong and robust policies and programs that can stand the test of time. Let us all step up to the mark, seize the moment, and make all of this happen for the benefit of our people and our children.
We also have some brief remarks from Minister Paula Ingabire, Minister of ICT in Rwanda. Let's listen to her as she talks about fragility, conflict, and violence across the African continent and the impact on governance and development.
And the African Union estimates around 7,000 Africans that, migrate from Africa every year. And so these are some of the results and impacts of fragility, conflict, and violence across the continent. Secondly, there's another aspect to the kind of fragility and the impact, which is around unemployment and inequality, where we have to be very deliberate to empower women and girls, but also people with disabilities, because these tend to be a good proportion of a society that has gone through conflict and violence over the years. Right. And to respond to the second part of your question, which was around what did it take with years of conflict and violence as a country to get ourselves out of that, I think two aspects come to my mind. The first is because we had been going through a long history of bad governance, it meant that there had to be good governance and a good leadership to really restore the type of sanity and security within the country. The second element is around inclusion, where everything that we did as a country boiled down to the people. Understanding that that was our greatest resource as a country that we were left with, also because naturally we didn't have the natural resources that any other countries have the pleasure of having. And so knowing that our people are our biggest human resource, it meant that we needed to focus on how we make our approach very inclusive and putting them at the heart and center of the programs that the government designs.
Dr. Deliso Kabambi, Governor of the Central Bank of Malawi, believes that African women hold the key to Africa's development. He contends that investment in women is critical for overcoming many of the constraints to development that Africa faces. Let's listen to Dr. Kabambi.
As already highlighted, Africa has about 1.2 billion people. 600 million plus are women. And that's a huge workforce. If it's trained in various skills, expertise, would have engineers, would have people that are going to help us in the mining, exploitation of the mining industry, that are going to help us in various skills development of the continent and so forth. So women empowerment is very, very crucial. But also let me point out this aspect that we are coming from a history in the continent where women were somehow neglected in terms of education. If you have two children, a boy and a girl, you would focus on a boy as opposed to a girl. And what we have, like an example of Malawi, is that the 70% of those of women older than 15 years do not have any skills or any qualification out of education. And that's a serious challenge that cuts across the continent, that women were left behind in terms of education and skills development. So we needed to focus on educating the girl child now. The statistics are clear that over half of Africa's population are now young people. And all those half are girls. If we focus on educating the girl child, and ensure that they get the necessary expertise in various disciplines and areas, then that's where Africa's development is going to come from. And I would say that women or the female gender in the African continent holds the key to our development. In fact, it's also been shown that girls that drop out of school out of early marriages, but also are bearing children at early age, they end up having more children, and those children they are unable to support. There's a problem of malnutrition, stunted,ness, and their children are less better off in terms of their IQ. So we have many young people that are growing that are having less IQ because they came from mothers that do not fully support them. If we educate a girl child, if we focus on investing on women, then we'll sort a lot more problems in the continent. Therefore, we'll have a workforce that is going to be more competitive, that is going to generate us a lot of GDP in the continent. In the case of Malawi, finally, I will give an example. If we were to focus on girl child education, Malawi will be earning somewhere around $600 million more every year for the next 30 years, much more than what we're getting in overseas donor assistance every year. And that's a story that would cut across the whole continent.